Hey, this is Sasha, and thanks for joining me in this week's video. And what I'd like to do this week and share with you how you can actually find a car that's reliable and fairly good for less than $5,000. And I want to share this with you because so many Americans are living in debt. Much of this has to do with buying cars that they can't afford. For example, if you're making only $30,000 a year and you're driving a $30,000 car, probably you can't afford it, or you're probably in debt or have some kind of bad debt that's extending you and you're probably a little bit tight. So if you're struggling, you might also be in the boat of, hey, I have a $3,000 car, but it's always got problems. It's not reliable. There's always issues with it. Shouldn't I just go to a dealer and buy a $20,000, $30,000 car? No, that's not the case. Not if you're making only $20,000 or $30,000 a year. So if you're struggling and if you're worried that, hey, I'm going to have a bad car, I'm going to be stranded on the road, worst thing, you're stranded on the road, you call an Uber, you call a Lyft, you get a ride to the hotel and spend $100 or $200 between all of those things. And then at least you don't have to chew up and eat up the depreciation of tens of thousands of dollars. It could be multiple thousands of dollars for buying that brand new car. But in either case, let me share with you the insights of how you can actually buy a $5,000 car that's fairly reliable and in good shape. So let's take a look here on screen first and understand where the pricings come in and where you can save the most money. All right, so the first thing I want to do is share with you actually the cost versus the age of the car. So here we have the years or the age of the car. And when you get that car, say it's a $35,000 car, immediately after you get it off the lot, and most people know this, once you drive it off the lot, you lose a lot of value. Okay, so over time, that value continues to die out. Now, it doesn't fully, go to zero or anything like that, but there's a point where things just start to slow down on that curve. And that's usually right around that 4 or 5 year mark, depending on the car, depending on some other factors. But this is really your depreciation line. Okay, so the depreciation curve is the steepest right at that first couple of years. And this is just due to social status. People want the newest thing. And when you have demand, when you have people wanting things, in that case, that's what drives the price. It's that new ability, the newness to it. Now, many people, especially older people, want to get those newer cars because they're worried that, hey, I might break down on the road. And this is a huge fear. And when fear is high, people are willing to pay premium dollars for that. But when we look at another curve, when we look at, let's just say, the repair costs, initially you should pretty much have zero on the repair costs with a brand new car. Now, with time, that's going to slowly creep up and start to move up as well. So if we look at this as the repair costs, you can see that we continue to accelerate, and really a peak is somewhere around, let's say, year 12 or 13. Now, this, of course, depends on some other factors within the car. So what is it that we want to do? Well, initially, the nice sweet spot is where we want to buy that car. So we'd like to look at year 4 or 5, okay, and that's the sweet spot, and we'll play and hold on to that car to maybe about year 12 or 14. Now, this can be longer depending on your driving habits and things like that, but this is kind of your nice rough sweet spot. So if you get it somewhere year 5, 6, 7, and it still has some good life left in it, you could still drive it for quite a while longer. But getting it somewhere in this zone allows you to maximize that depreciation factor, so you don't have to pay for the depreciation factor that someone else does, and you still don't have a lot of repair costs. So that's what you want to do, is you want to kind of concentrate in this area. This would be your sweet spot, is this kind of 5 year range, maybe to about 10 or 12 year range. And of course, again, this depends on the make of the car and a lot of other factors, which I'll go into here in just a second. All right, so here are a few key points that I want to cover that really affect the value and allow you to get a good deal on a car that's still reliable. And the first one is kind of the age of the car, which you just saw, the depreciation factor. Now, in this case, when we look at that age of the car, somewhere around year 4 or plus, it could be 5 and plus, but this depends on also the brand and the type of car, is where you want to stick around with, because you don't want to pay for those depreciation costs. You want to also stick to lower miles. Obviously, the older the car is, you'll probably have a lot of miles. If you can get something like under 45,000 miles, you should still have a fairly long lifespan to that car or vehicle, especially as you get into that 100,000 mile mark, where that's where you need more of a timing belt, timing chain, a new water pump, all those kinds of things. So that's where the repair costs start to go a little bit more. But if you could get something 40,000, 35,000 miles on a car, that would be great. And the other thing is when you look at the brand or type, if you're trying to get a car that's very popular and everybody wants it, it's going to be more expensive. The costs are going to be higher. If you get something that only the old people want or nobody wants, and even then they're still reliable and they're still running just fine from point A to point B, you'll be able to drive that price or the cost lower. And this happens more so also based on region. So if you're looking in Florida, when I used to live in Florida, you're able to get a lot of great deals because a lot of people, well, they died off, and you could get a nice older car, especially one of my first couple of cars that were a cheap older car, but in good shape with low miles because somebody passed away and now their son or daughter was selling the car and you were able to get it. Now, if you're in a location with a lot of young people, it may be a little more difficult, but if you open up your scope, you'll be able to see those kinds of things. So anyways, these are a few factors real quick that you're looking at, but in either case, let me show you on screen how to really do this and just show you a few examples. All right, so here we are on AutoTrader, and what I'd like to do is share with you some insights on how to really find these cars for $5,000. What I'll do is right away go to more search options. Of course, these are not going to be the brand newest cars, but just show you how to look for these a little bit more reliable cars, but still under that $5,000 range. So here's used. Let's say we're looking for something $1,000 or more, and let's just say $6,000 in our search. And the reason we do that is because we probably can negotiate sometimes a little bit lower on the price. I'll go ahead and, depending on what you're looking for, I'll do hatchback, sedan, coupe, SUV crossover, even a wagon is fine for the time being. As far as the year goes, I'm going to start my search. I'm always going a little wider at the beginning. I'll start my search from, let's say, 2005. It is the year 2017 right now. Let's say actually even 2003, and we'll go 2015. So I'm going a little bit wider just to make things easier, and I'll go with something under 60,000 miles. Remember, once you get into 100,000, you need kind of a new timing belt, a new timing chain, probably a new water pump, maybe even a new radiator, who knows. And then typically what you want to do is you'll also want to go to private sellers. And that's because with dealers, you'll probably pay a little more premium. With private sellers, you know who you're buying it from, and especially if you're one owner kind of thing. Let's make sure it has a price, has some photos, and I'll put in a zip code here for a Florida zip code, but we'll do any distance just to kind of take a look at the range and see what's out there. So I'll go ahead and do a quick search. Hit the button, let's see what they find, and we'll just take a quick peek here. Okay, so let's start with mileage. Let's go with the lowest miles, and you can see we have 5 pages here. So again, it's not going to be usually the most fun car to drive, but here you could take a look. 2008 Ford Focus, 32,000 miles, $5,800. Right there. So even if you put in an extra $1,000 into repairing that car, you know, you could still have a fairly decent car rather than, you know, paying for $30,000 for a car and taking a hit over a year for, you know, another $10,000. So you can see here's nice shape car, 32,000 miles. Now, we don't know if this is the original miles, the original owner. Those kinds of things you would have to do on your own and check those things out. But in either case, you want to go ahead and do your due diligence before buying a car. But $5,800, even if you go with, you know, can lower that rate, negotiate it a little bit, $5,000, there you are out the door, $5,000. Let's take a look at another one here. So as we go a little bit lower, here's a Hyundai 2013. This one has a rebuilt title. So as you take a look at some of these, you'll want to avoid some of these things because once you get into rebuilt titles, you're not really sure how those things will play out. Sometimes you can get great deals, but other times I just don't want the personal hassle. So I'd usually rather just buy an older car from an older gentleman, if I could, rather than kind of a rebuilt title, because I really don't know how it was rebuilt or what kind of accident it was in. Here's another one. Let's see, a 2010 Chevy Aveo. So if you look at this one, again, not the fanciest car, smaller, a little bit smaller. It's not, the brand is not anything fantastic or spectacular, but you can see 44,000 miles right here. Engine and those kinds of things, you'll have to listen to those. You can see it's a manual. So if you know how to drive a manual, you could probably save a little bit on that because it's less desirable. Now, it may also be a little bit more difficult to sell those things and get rid of them eventually. But in either case, it's something that you may want to still purchase for the time being. Let's see, cars cash only. Would love to credit removed for secured party. New tires with great thread. Used as a second vehicle only. So again, gives you an idea. Let's take a look here of another one. Here we have a Nissan Versa S, and this one is probably 34,000 or 37,000 miles. It's probably not 37 miles. One owner, first car, mostly highway miles. So it's 37 on the mileage, but probably 37,000. But you could see again, 5950. Maybe you could get it right around 5 grand, 5,200. Who knows? Depending on how good you are at negotiating. But you could see right here, something around this level right here. Get a car. Let's see, what is the miles? 60. Looks like 69,000 miles. Okay, so it's actually a lot more miles than they mentioned. So maybe not the best shape, but again, something to investigate and look at. And as you go through, you can see some of these people write 163, 212. So those aren't really the real miles. So as you scroll down and get more precise here, or more realistic, then you can get into something something more favorable. So here, Chevy Malibu, okay, $5,000, 24,000 miles. Again, it's not a fancy car, but it may be one that might be okay. So start looking at these things and evaluating, you know, what deal you could find. You can see that there's a handful of cars. Not all of them are going to be brand in the best shape. You'll want to make sure you avoid things like rebuilt titles. You'll want to avoid, you know, probably dealers as well. You'll want to find things that actually are one owner. So here, 2011 Hyundai Accent. So you can see it's not the schnazziest car out there. Right there, you can see the design is it's okay, but it'll get you there. You know, it'll be in okay shape. If it's in okay shape, it has low miles and it's well taken care of. One owner, extremely low miles, clean Carfax, non-smoker. You know, and other than that, you can see right here, the only flaw is the scrap on the passenger side. So there's a little bit, some issue there maybe. There's that little scrape, I guess they're talking about. But other than that, if you're okay with a little ding, there's a $5,000 car, 2011, about 6-7 years old. At the time, 37,000 miles, and it'll get you there from point A to point B. All right, so thanks for joining me in this video. I hope you found it helpful and insightful to seeing what it is that you can get with just $5,000. It's not that you need to go out and take a loan to buy a $30,000 car if you're driving a $2,000 or $3,000 car now and it's not as reliable. Even if you took $2,000 to rebuild that car, you're still not going to lose as much as you would with the depreciation factor with buying a new car, because the minute you drive that $35,000 car off that lot, even if it's $40,000, $50,000, you're going to lose a lot of money through depreciation. Now, yes, you won't have maybe $500 or $1,000 in repair costs here and there, but look at the long-term effects of that. You know, you'll have those things either on your credit, especially if you're not a person that can buy that $35,000 with cash. So you'll have a lot of other financial obligations, not to mention what you could have done with that money putting into investments and other areas of return. So think about that in the long-term scheme of things. Again, if you have a ton of money, you know, by all means, there's nothing wrong with buying a brand new car if you have a great deal of capital in the bank. But if you're struggling, if you got credit card debt, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you might be making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year, and you want a $30,000, $40,000 car, it's probably not the wisest thing, because in the end, you'll be paying for it every single month and time after time, and you're just paying a lot of that interest and not so much on the principal. So if you're looking to just get a nice car just to keep you moving forward until you, by all means, save a little more money or improve in your lifestyle, then take a look at some of these types of vehicles and cars where you can save and then make the most of it. Thanks for joining me this week. I hope you found this video helpful. If you want to join me on my newsletter list, click the link right up here, and that way you get notified as I release new videos. In the end, remember, do what you love, contribute to others, but most importantly, live life abundantly. I'll see you next time.